All right, let's dive in. We're going deep into noiri.pdf by Jerry Bader today.
Oh, this is a good one. 4 stories.
4 Neo Noir short stories, right?
Yeah.
The Gold Cricket, The Bastard, Cine City, and Killer Jazz.
Yeah, you got it.
Lot of ground to cover.
There is, and each story is like its own world, but they're all connected by these like dark threads of betrayal and ambition, all that classic noir stuff, but with a modern twist.
Yeah, and knowing that Bader comes from a media production background, it really makes you wonder how much of that like visual storytelling comes into play.
Oh, absolutely. Like the way he describes the settings, it's so vivid. You can practically feel the grit, the shadows, the weight of the city pressing down on you. It's almost cinematic.
Yeah, totally. So let's start with the Gold Cricket, shall we?
Okay, let's...
Border town vibes, right?
Oh, yeah, right on the edge, the U.S.-Mexico border.
Yeah, and we've got Cheesy Johnston, our drug dealer on the run.
Desperate to disappear,
Yeah.
Trying to get to Mexico. But he's got Jake Klein on his tail.
Klein, the bounty hunter. But he's not exactly your stereotypical, like, tough guy, is he?
No, not at all. He's got this moral flexibility, like he's supposed to bring Cheesy in, but you get the sense he's tempted by the chance to help him escape.
Yeah, there's that internal struggle, right? Like, where's the line between duty and self-preservation?
And the setting just intensifies it, right? That border town where everything feels transient, like nobody's really rooted. Everyone's got secrets.
Oh, and then there's Detective Joanne Leslie, battling a cocaine addiction, a complicated relationship with another woman.
Yeah, Ness.
Ness, right. And she's trying to catch Cheesy, too. It's a whole tangled web.
It really is.
Yeah.
And what I find so interesting about Leslie is how Bader uses her struggles, her vulnerability, to add another layer to this whole idea of justice. Like, even the people upholding the law are flawed. They're fighting their own demons.
And that scene where she finds Klein's hidden cash.
Oh.
It's a turning point, right? The moral lines get super blurry.
Totally. It becomes about survival, about who you can trust, who's going to betray you. And the border itself becomes this symbol, not just a physical boundary, but a line between identities, moralities. Everything's kind of like shifting and uncertain.
Yeah, and it's that uncertainty that keeps you hooked. But then there's the ending. Kaplinsky, the cop who's got this history with Klein, returns his recovered money clip at the hospital.
Right.
It's more than just a gesture. It's like there's a code, some kind of understanding between them.
Yeah, like even in this world where everyone seems to be playing angles, there are still these moments of loyalty, I guess, or maybe it's more like debts owed and favors repaid.
Yeah.
It's complicated.
It is complicated. All right, so we've got betrayal, moral gray areas, a setting that's practically a character itself. Let's move on to The Bastard. This one takes us all over L.A., right?
It does. From like those luxurious mansions to, I think there's a rundown motel at some point.
Yeah, and I think even a Japanese-themed mall comes into play.
Yeah, that's right. And that contrast isn't just for the scenery. It's like Bader is using those different locations to highlight the disparities in wealth and power, though, like the hidden rot beneath the surface of all that L.A. glamour.
It's definitely a wilder ride than the Gold Cricket. We meet Bolshoi Boris Antipov, this larger-than-life Russian mobster.
Right, and his estranged wife, Carmen. She is a force to be reckoned with. Just as ruthless as Boris, maybe even more so.
Oh, for sure. And then there's the driver. This guy gets caught up in a kidnapping baby Kato, and you're just like, oh man, wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah, he's almost an innocent bystander, swept up in this whole power struggle. But the thing is, that kidnapping sets off this chain of events that plays out years later. It's like a slow burn, The consequences just keep rippling outward.
Yeah, and years later, Boris is gone. His daughter Carla is running the show now.
Yeah.
Trying to regain control of her father's company.
She's got her own methods, though.
Yeah, not exactly playing by the rules, is she? A body double, shady deals, and the Yakuza lurking in the shadows.
Oh, yeah, and Bader drops these little hints along the way. Like, remember those Japanese creatures marking the parking levels?
Yeah. At first I thought they were just quirky details.
Right, but then you realize they're connected to the Yakuza, foreshadowing their involvement. It's like he's building this atmosphere of paranoia and suspicion. You start questioning every detail, every character's motive.
And that scene in the mall, Ransom, Carla's chauffeur, and Kate, her lawyer, they're trapped.
Oh, yeah.
surrounded by who knows what. It's so tense.
It really highlights how nobody is safe in this world, not even those closest to Carla.
It's like that constant fear of betrayal, right? You
Yeah.
never know who to trust. And then, boom, Malcolm, Carla's guardian, gets assassinated, and we see those cherry blossom tattoos, the Yakuza mark. Talk about a
Those
twist.
tattoos, they're not just for show. They connect everything, the Russian mob, the family drama, the Yakuza. It's all intertwined.
It's like Bader saying, look closer. Nothing is what it seems. And Carla, she's so cold, so calculating. That description of her office, all sharp angles and steel, it's like a reflection of her personality.
Absolutely. She's a product of her environment, but she's also like embracing that ruthlessness. It makes you question if she's even capable of like genuine emotion.
Yeah, it's chilling. And the ending of The Bastard, just when you think you've got it figured out.
True.
Sato, Kato's grandmother, this powerful figure, she joins forces with Kate and Ransom. It's a total power shift.
It is. And it leaves you wondering, who really wins in the end? Is it about power or is it about survival?
So many questions. But before we get into those, let's take a quick break, and we'll come back and talk about Cine City and Killer Jazz.
Sounds good. Hugh, from the border to the heart of L.A., huh?
Yeah.
Bader doesn't let up on the tension. But what gets me is how these stories, they feel so different on the surface.
Right. Totally different settings, different characters. But underneath it all, there's this, like, shared darkness.
Yeah, like a common thread.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest ones is betrayal. It's everywhere in these stories. Like, it's almost contagious.
Yeah, like a disease. It infects every relationship, every deal.
Exactly. Like in The Gold Cricket, Leslie, she betrays her badge, she betrays Klein, even betrays herself in a way.
And Klein, he's playing both sides, too. Trying to survive, but also maybe holding on to some kind of, like, twisted sense of loyalty.
Yeah, it's hard to tell with him. But then you go to The Bastard, and it's like betrayal is baked into the family history.
Hmm.
Carmen kidnaps her own husband's son,
I know, right? It's cold.
ice cold. And then years later, her daughter Carla's doing the same thing, manipulating people, using them, betraying them to get what she wants. It's a family business, I guess.
Yeah, messed up family business. But even in Cine City, which feels a little lighter, right? There's that betrayal, too. Bobby trying to cheat his wife out of her share.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's like Bader saying ambition, greed, it all leads to this same place. Betrayal is just part of the game.
Which brings us to that other big theme, the price of power. Each story shows us how the need for more, whether it's money or control, can really warp people.
Yeah, totally. Cheesy in The Gold Cricket, he wants that quick cash, that feeling of being in control.
And it backfires spectacularly.
Oh, yeah. He ends up on the run, relying on the very people he's betrayed. It's like a warning sign. Power can be so fleeting, especially when it's built on lies.
And then there's Carla in The Bastard. She wants control of her father's empire, but she goes about it in such a destructive way.
It's like she's learned nothing from her father's mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she pushes everyone away, creates more chaos, and ends up like more isolated than ever.
It's ironic, right? The more she tries to control things, the more they spiral out of control.
Exactly. But you know what I find interesting is how these stories also show us these glimmers of hope, these characters who find a different kind of power. Like Tiny in The Gold Cricket, he starts out as Cheesy's, like errand boy.
Yeah, totally.
But by the end, he's using his street smarts, the money he's gotten, to build something legitimate. He finds a way out.
And Carol in Killer Jazz, she starts as a waitress, but she becomes this fierce protector, this unexpected force.
Oh yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah.
It's like they both find strength, not through power over others, but through like this inner resilience.
Yeah, they adapt, they make the best of a bad situation. And you know, I have to admit, Cine City threw me off at first. It's so different in tone. Like, it's almost funny, satirical.
Right. It's got that like over-the-top Hollywood vibe, but I think that's what makes it so effective. Bader's using that absurdity to expose the same darkness we see in the other stories.
It's like he's saying, even in this glamorous make-believe world, the same rules apply. Ambition, greed, betrayal, it's all there under the surface.
And let's not forget Tuco, the mobster. He's always working in the background, reminding us that even in Hollywood, there are real consequences.
Totally. And Jeannie, Joey's assistant, she's the one who holds everything together.
She is. She's the voice of reason in this crazy world. It's like, even amidst the chaos, there are these people trying to do the right thing.
So we've got these recurring themes, betrayal, the price of power, those unexpected heroes. What's the big takeaway, the thing that makes these stories stick with you?
You know, for me, it's how Bader makes you question everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Good versus evil, winners versus losers. It's all much more complicated than it seems.
Yeah, he doesn't give you easy answers. It's up to the reader to decide what it all means.
And that's what makes it so thought-provoking. These stories, they're like a mirror reflecting back the complexities of human nature.
We see those complexities in ourselves too, right? The potential for both good and bad.
Absolutely. It's not about judging. It's about understanding the choices we make, the forces that shape us.
Okay, so we've talked about the border, the underbelly of LA, the Hollywood scene. Now it's time to dive into the world of killer jazz.
Oh, this one's a wild ride. Get ready for some killer music, dangerous politics, and a whole lot of intrigue. We've seen the dark side of ambition play out, right? From the desperate drug deals to the cutthroat world of Hollywood. But there's this other side to noiri.pdf that I keep coming back to.
Yeah, those moments of grace you mentioned earlier, those little sparks of humanity that kind of cut through the darkness.
Yeah, exactly. Like, Bader doesn't shy away from showing us how messed up things can get, but he also reminds us that even in those darkest corners, there's still, like, a possibility for connection, for redemption even.
It's like he's acknowledging the harsh realities, but he's not giving in to cynicism completely.
Right. And I think Killer Jazz really highlights that. The ending, with Delburn starting over in Toronto with Carol,
Yeah.
it's almost hopeful, you know? Like, maybe escape is possible if you're willing to let go of the past, the need for power, all of it.
It's a pretty radical departure from the classic noir ending. Usually there's no escape, right? The characters are trapped by their choices, by fate, whatever. But here it's like Delburn chooses a different path.
Yeah, he chooses to walk away from the game entirely. And it makes you wonder, is that the real victory in these stories? Not about coming out on top, but about finding some kind of peace, some sense of self-worth that isn't tied to power or money.
That's a really interesting way to look at it. Like, maybe those characters who find that kind of peace, they're the ones who truly win in the end. Tiny, building his detective agency, Carol escaping with Delburn. They've kind of transcended the whole game.
Exactly. It's not about the material gains, it's about something deeper.
Yeah.
And, you know, thinking back on all four stories, there's another character who comes to mind, the driver and the bastard.
Oh, yeah. He starts out as this pawn caught in the middle of everything.
Right. But he makes a choice. He deviates from the plan.
Wow.
He doesn't play by anyone's rules. And we don't know exactly what happens to him, but there's this sense of possibility, like he might actually break free from the cycle of violence and create his own destiny.
He's like a symbol of hope, right? A reminder that even when you're surrounded by darkness, you still have the power to choose.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And that's what makes these stories so powerful. They leave you with these lingering questions about morality, about survival, about what it truly means to be human in a world that's constantly testing you.
Yeah, it's not just about the crime and the suspense. It's about the human condition, about those gray areas where right and wrong get all blurred together.
Exactly. It's about the tension between our desire for power and our need for connection. And it's about that flicker of hope that persists even in the darkest of times.
I think that's a perfect note to end on. So for our listeners out there, the question we leave you with is this. In a world that often feels like a noir story itself, full of corruption and uncertainty, what choices will you make?
Will you be seduced by the darkness, or will you fight to hold on to your own sense of what's right? It's a question worth pondering.
Absolutely. And with that, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the world of noiri.pdf. Thanks for joining us on this journey through the shadows.
It's been a pleasure exploring these stories with you, and remember, sometimes it's the shadows that reveal the most about who we are.
Until next time, keep those noir vibes alive.